All right, welcome everyone to our November OFAR webinar. And we're really excited about this webinar. We do this every year, a similar type of webinar where we have some of our participants from the previous year. All of our previous participants from the previous year are exceptional, but we have three very exceptional folks today who are going to share with you their journey last year. From the planning stages, which many of you are just about to get into that process of planning your action plan for the spring. And they're going to share how it went, all the wonderful things that they did with their students, how their students responded, and maybe a little bit about how they're continuing their work post the OFAR program. So we're going to hear from three folks. David Chavez from Ethnic Studies, Schetema Nealy, Dr. Schetema Nealy from Chemistry at Compton College, and Anna Rodriguez, who's in Child Development at Moore Park College. All right, I think you know all these characters, but I'm here today with James Glappa-Grossflag, my co-lead on the program. James,
hello, everybody. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday to all. And of course, I didn't include our coaches today because the wonderful work they do, you all have had a chance to meet with them. And I know we want to get directly to the meat of this session today. Just a few reminders. Obviously, today we're meeting for the action plan. There's some wonderful open office hours coming up around OER. And I just saw Joy. Joy, did you want to mention anything about the open office hour on November 17th?
Just that I will be sending out announcements, but you're more than welcome to drop in if you have any questions about OER or maybe are looking for some resources. The team here at College of the Canyons will be there and available to answer questions. So drop in with any if you have them.
Thank you, Joy. And we think this is a really a wonderful time because you'll be right in the process of your action plan at that point. So if you find that, oh gosh, I'm missing something, this is a wonderful opportunity to get some coaching from the expert College of the Canyons OER team. So thank you, Joy. And then December 15th will be our last required webinar for the fall. And it's going to be a deep dive into open pedagogy. With a couple of our California Community College faculty members who have done a lot of work in this area. All right. I think you probably are aware of the webinar absence policy, but if you cannot attend these live, you know, we understand that sometimes things do come up unexpectedly. We ask that you follow this this process here. And essentially it's letting folks know and then viewing the session recording as soon as possible and doing the required comments in the discussion area in your Canvas course. All right, before we get started, James, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the team?
No, just I just think I should say how wonderful it is that everybody's in the class, making progress in the class. We hear great things from our facilitators, so that is really fantastic. And what I learned from you today, this is the largest class we've had in our 4 years. So 45 folks accepted and active.
Yeah, and we were just meeting with our team leaders and really saying, boy, this is an amazing cohort. So looking forward to our continued work together. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to David here, but and I know he needs to go first because he's got some other activities today. So David, we're going to turn it over to you. Here's a lovely picture of you, David, from last year's course, and I will stop sharing so that you can share your screen.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so much and welcome to the new cohort. Really excited for what y'all are going to produce in terms of your OERI pedagogy, anti-racist pedagogy, especially at this in particular moment right now that we're in, that we're going through. So yeah, just welcome. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, stop. All right, let's see, it should start right now. Okay. Let's see, it's taking a moment. Okay. All right, can you all see my Google website here? Is that showing up for you? All right, cool, thank you, Una. So yeah, so one of my main projects was, as an ethnic studies faculty member, the core of our discipline and the foundation of our discipline is founded in anti-racism, anti-colonialism, right? And in particular, the question of liberation for people, all peoples. And so when think about OERI, it seemed like, oh, okay, this seems like the place I should be, or this should be an easy thing because I feel like I already do this, like anti-racist pedagogy. But I really got a lot out of this whole experience especially with my cohort, my colleagues at Compton, but with everyone here. And one of my biggest, I guess one of the projects that I had in terms of my action plan to implement for my year was creating a liquid syllabus and transforming the language of the syllabus, as well as some of the content in my course. So Liquid Syllabus is a website using Google. This one is using Google Sites to be able to create a more accessible space for our online learners, and also having a complement to a physical copy of a syllabus, but also more personal, kind of breaks down this thing, not a contract really. That's what I really like about the Liquid Syllabus. It breaks down this idea of this contract or this kind of punitive language, which is overtly, wrapped up in the ideas of oppression or white supremacy and the way that language or law has been used against our communities. And so I think the Liquid Syllabus is a really good format to break that down and break that barrier. So some of the things I want to highlight here that I transformed for my class was one of the things I did, which is the ungrading part of my syllabus. So something that I learned is, the way we can actually transform our pedagogy and have anti-racist pedagogy is also be critical of the formation of the way punitive grading has been done. And so ungrading is this really great opportunity that I know a lot of faculty around the United States or even beyond are trying to implement. And so I've created this page, this video that we watched together as a class, and I assigned it as an intro for students to watch to really break down the concept of what does the last 40 years of research show why grading with letter grades is actually not conducive to learning. And so, and ultimately to learning and comprehension, and also having a positive relationship to their learning and college courses. So I created this page for students to be able to check it out. And additionally, my assignments section right here is something that I also changed as well. So what I did was I created 2 assignments thinking with the OERI framework, and particularly anti-racism. This idea of having what's called a conscious content creator assignment, as well as having reflections every week. So instead of having just discussions, thinking about students actually sharing their reflection, how is this information impacting them? Having them share their stories, and with the content, how is it connected to them? Another aspect is this conscious content creator. So utilizing the skills that our students have around social media, which unfortunately can be very much a hotbed of bigotry, that we've seen, or doxing and these things like that. So I think it's important to utilize the anti-racist framework to have our students actually create conscious content. Like, what does that mean to be a content creator? Create something where you're actually informing people about the great work that we learn in our course, and how to approach social media from an informed media literacy landscape, and in particular critical media literacy landscape. So the program last year got me to rethink and create and implement this type of assessment. And then the final project for my class 2 is also based on something that is becoming a lot more popular, the idea of an e-portfolio, which I call a zine project, where students are really curating their learning and focused on the question of what is the most important information from our course that you want to share with your community that can fight towards, that can be utilized as a way to develop, anti-racist practices, activities, or activism directly affecting you and where you live. So I really personalize my assignments, which is, I think, a big part of the anti-racist pedagogy that we learned in this course. And one other thing just to highlight on my zine portfolio as well. Or two more things real quick, I guess, is I'm looking at my time. I believe we have 10 minutes. Is that correct? Una, or about a little bit less? I think you're muted, or maybe I can't hear you for some reason.
You're fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. Another thing that I wrote in the beginning of the fall was actually changing my reading list. So ethnic studies, like I said, while it is inherently founded on anti-colonialism and anti-racism coming out of the 60s, in particular from Africana studies or Black studies, Native American studies, Chicanx, Latinx studies, or at the time Chicano studies and Chicana studies, and also Asian American studies, and now rightfully Asian American and Pacific Islander studies. And so one of the things that I was critical of in my previous classes was the importance of the intersectional analysis of third world feminism or women of color, feminists of color thinkers. And so in the past, before I joined this cohort, I would assign it just as like one section at the very end of my class when I was in this class, got me to really rethink about that. And so our fourth week of courses in our 16-week semester, we focus on third world feminism as a way to introduce how we're going to talk about the rest of the class. Just as important as the previous week, thinking about colonialism and chattel slavery, as well as the not the tension, but the overlapping and interlocking aspects of domination that focus on gender and race, and not being separate categories, but interconnected. So it really got me to think about that, and also add some more women of color scholars in my readings. I think it's important for students to see themselves in the authors, and also in every week I introduce who actually writes the material we write, and so getting to see them, I think, is an also important part of having anti-racist pedagogy. And so it's not just contained in this week. What I said I wanted to do was actually make it more common throughout my syllabus, to highlight the scholarship of women of color, in particular third world feminist perspectives. So going into my fifth week, I have a scholar from a Native scholar, Dr. Kuchoraize Baldi. And then in my week 6, talking about the introduction to Black studies or Africana studies, we focus on a writing looking at activism, specifically led by African American women in South Los Angeles, or South LA, South Central. And that's also connected to thinking about my pedagogy, really place-based as well. So my students are connecting with streets. They're reading about streets and communities, and also of women of color who are doing this work as well. So yeah, and then just kind of keeps going on. I try to have one for each one of my weeks. Maya Gay in week 9. I have week 11, Therese Burden-Stelly, Angela Davis in week 12. And so yeah, I think that's like something I'm still continuing to work on, but I definitely I went from, I think, having it be just 1 week to try to be more integrated into the majority of my course. And then the last thing I do want to, I guess, kind of highlight as well. Well, it gets out a few minutes, so let's see. Collective agreements. I think this is an important part in anti-racist pedagogy, as well as the idea of really really being cognizant of what scholars, and particular education scholars, have called like the carceral aspects of our classrooms, right? The way that we replicate the language of the state, or replicate the language of the court system, or of the business sector, and the market, to like lead the way we teach, as opposed to thinking about it from an anti-racist perspective, which this whole OFAR program really focuses on. And so I created, I borrowed language, but I also developed it for and tailored it towards my students, about how we commit to a collective learning space, instead of how we commit to being a studious student, or how I commit to follow everything on the syllabus, or I'll receive punishment, right? I think if we just commit to each other and commit to the learning space collectively, it's a lot better. And also taking a lot of support from a colleague or scholar, a fellow colleague at ELAC, where I borrowed a lot from this syllabus format as well, about how we, and ELAC is East Los Angeles College. And so starting on the left side is like letting my students know, this is what I'm committing to as your professor. So it's not just on them, which I think it's, the syllabus is oftentimes unidirectional, which means that like the students have to do this and that's it. There's no like agreement or collectivity in our learning. So I think it's this is one of the things that I have, and what it's really good about this this format again that I'm borrowing from other folks who have actually I think gone through the OFAR program or have used liquid syllabi in the past, is that it's right next to what the student commitments are. So they're not on separate pages, they're on an equal playing field. And I think this visually, but also the language that it borrows from both, I think is very important for demonstrating to our students and breaking down the type of punitive and inherently racial thinking that goes into how we approach our students. As students, oftentimes I think a lot of really good, not oftentimes, what I wanted to say was that there's a lot of really good research by education scholars that talk about how the classroom can be a either an affirming space or a space that also affirms white supremacy and the colonial constructs of our society outside of the classroom. Instead of like, how do we really really ensure that our pedagogy in the classroom is breaking that down, giving students tools as they walk out of our classroom as well, but also really building what the tools that students already have when they come. And the last thing I guess I'll share is why I also pick certain themes. So for ethnic studies, I picked Fred Hampton here as our theme because I introduced who he is. And one of the main reasons I do is because he actually started as a community college student and before becoming the head of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. And one of his famous statements, we're going to fight racism with solidarity. This importance of solidarity building as being the core of how I teach my course. And so, and students can read more about him, there's continual reading opportunities. But let me go ahead and stop my sharing and just say that, I'm more than welcome to put the link in the chat. It's an open website for anybody to visit, and I'll put in the chat. Folks want to take a look at it, and I really want to thank those in Martez and everyone else, our coach Martez right here, as well as everyone else on my team. I see Dr. Nealy right there, Professor Gatry right there. So thank you all so much for letting me share today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. That was wow. Wow. So David was one of our exceptional students, but many were as well. And so I'd like to give you a few moments here if anyone has any questions for David. I know he has to take off shortly. And I think there might have been some questions in the chat window as well, David, if you want to take a look at those. Well, actually, there are. You've got a lot of great questions, actually.
And Greg has a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent, David. I love it. I've used the liquid syllabus for the equity and culturally responsive teaching class that we have for @1. It's really cool. It's not really a question, but it's more of a comment. Canvas just like last month changed their code so that it's possible to hide quantitative data from students on the grades page. So for those folks who are doing contract grading or other types of equity-minded grading, it's possible, in other words, to give students feedback, of course, comments and rubrics and all that stuff. Up until now, it was always required that the numbers be visible to students, but we can now hide that. We can't hide it from ourselves. Canvas is a computer program, and computers are, subject to the tyranny of having a precision. But from the perspective of giving feedback to students, that is a new thing that just happened. So I wanted to mention that to everyone. I know lots of us are probably interested in that type of thing. And I'm hoping for, participating, viewing, presenting, whatever, on how we can use those new tools to do things like the contract grading that you mentioned. Thanks.
Right on, yeah.
Thanks, Greg. We may take you up on it.
Yeah, and then the question around the reader for required material, right, so like finding OERI content. So a lot of it, I'm adapting both that syllabus demonstrated the various readers that I use. So getting sources from that are either available to be publishing online and then transforming it onto the Canvas website, so it's a lot easier to read and more accessible rather than just dropping a PDF, or giving the option for both. working on some time to transform our PDFs into Word and then put it on the Canvas website, as well as the Canvas as well. But I also want to really highlight, especially for ethnic studies, we are very lucky that we have now a brand new OERI textbook on LibreText, which is available and written by California Community College professors, as well as a second one on new directions in Chicano studies, or Chicanx and Latinx studies, which are very useful. And I've actually been now adding those as well into my syllabus as well. I saw a question about my reading material and how I'm doing this. So yeah.
Thanks for
I
that,
hope,
David.
yeah.
You want to drop, I mean, if it's easy for you to drop links to those in the chat window, or you can just send that to us later and we'll put it in the course for people.
Yeah.
Those two that you mentioned.
Yeah, no problem. I'll add them right in the chat. No problem.
Okay, super. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for David?
Yeah, I have a question.
All righty.
Yeah, for the sake of clarity. So David, you're saying that you're not using one particular reader, you're using links to various articles and the like?
Yeah, so I'm using the textbook. So there's one reader, which is the new textbook on Introduction to Ethnic Studies. But I also supplement every week, not only with just this online textbooks, as LibreText textbook, but also other readings that is more like the traditional reader, I guess, where we have a collection of different authors, right? So I use both, and it takes a little bit of time though to get those accessible, instead of just the days of just having photocopies or just general scans. Like, that doesn't work. So so I use both, and it did take a little bit of a while to curate that, but yeah.
Like particularly the selection you had for Jared Ball,
Yeah.
that was toward the beginning.
Yeah.
Is that
so that's
in
a video.
the ethnic studies reader, or is that something you provide a link to?
Yeah, I provide a link to the I Mix What I Like website. So his website is like super good for I think helping with that. So what I do is in Canvas I embed his video from I Mix What I Like with a little bit of an intro. So it's automatically counted as part of a text. So I have visual text and films that I show as well. So I put that right into the Canvas shell in the module as one of the assigned readings, which is that talk by Jared Ball.
Right.
Does that make sense? Or did I answer the question?
Thank you, David.
Yes, thank you.
Gary, do you have something quick? Because we're just about to make a switch. But
yeah, I just wanted a quick question about using ungrading and Canvas. Is there any big obstacles to making Canvas work the way you want it to?
Yeah, so the Canvas option I do is, it gives you the complete, incomplete. So you have to just, I think, clarify with our students what the incomplete on Canvas is, and like have a small conversation, or if it's an online asynchronous course, is have a video about what that's going to look like on their end. So I think you front end it with, these are the limitations on Canvas as an asynchronous course in terms of how ungrading comes out on your end. So what I do is I clarify, and on that web page, I know I only showed it for really quickly, but I show that for incomplete, it'll that's the language they use, but for us, I say it's in revision, right? I utilize different terms to allow for it as well, and also show that a check mark is complete. A line, like I show them that the symbol for them is like it's like a line that comes out. So I also say what that means, and then yeah. So I think it's a matter of like front ending and spending just a little bit of time to create a video that says this is what it looks like on your end, but this is what it means, and getting them on board on it. So yeah, thank you all again. Sorry for taking up so much time.
yeah, no worries. Thank you, David. That was wonderful. And boy, it does sound like there's a lot of interest in ungrading and so forth. So we'll have to think about how we can move forward and provide some optional events for people. All right. I now do want to turn it over to Dr. Schetema Nealy, who is a chemistry professor and is going to tell us a little bit about some exciting work she did with her students last semester.
Thank you so much. So yes, I teach chemistry at Compton College. I teach all the levels that we offer, which goes from chemistry with non-majors or for non-majors through the general chemistry series. And so I did use my OFAR project on all the different levels of chemistry students. when I set out to do my project, this is what I was wanting my students to do. I wanted them to, sorry, I'm trying to keep it on the chat. So I wanted them to find some free electronic resources that I can then embed into our online textbook. So prior to OFAR, I was already transitioning to using OER resources, but then OFAR came along and it just really helped me expand on what I knew for that. But being able to change the textbook was new to me at that time. And so when I learned I could do that, I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to now incorporate all these things that, videos and things that I would love for my students to be able to have right at their fingertips when they're reading the textbook. Additionally, I wanted my students to be able to explain how the resources they found tied to the chemistry we were learning in class. Okay. The textbook we choose, or I chose to use for the class, is the Petrucci et al. Listed here. It's a pretty common textbook for general chemistry. And so I thought we can go with that. We did OFAR in the fall. We started in the fall, and then I had signed up to teach in the winter session. And then beyond that, I was like, okay, we'll do the project in the spring as well. And so I thought I'll let winter session be my trial run. And the winter session included those students who were non-majors, not chemistry majors. And what I did was I said, okay, I'll make it simple. I'm going to just have my students fill out I'm going to give them a one-pager and give them, freedom to do these things. So the one-pager, well, 2 pages, I guess you could say, was here. So here were the instructions that I gave them. And then on the back of the page, I said, this is where they're going to fill out the information. And they got a paper copy, or they could do this digitally. So I said, here you go. I explained the project in the class. I told them what anti-racism was and why we were doing it. And I said, have at it, have fun. And what happened was I learned a lot about how I should probably set up this project, because I got a lot of questions on things that I didn't anticipate. They weren't finding the textbook. They didn't know what free resources meant, or they weren't finding resources. Or if I asked them to give me a reference, they didn't really understand what I meant. I said, I just need the website so I can get the resource, right? It was really challenging. So I said, okay, I think I need to change the procedure. And what I did instead was I broke the project down into 4 different parts. So the 4 parts are here. What I thought I would do, excuse me, is have a discussion with my students on what is anti-racism, why would it be important to have a discussion about anti-racism or even consider anti-racism in a chemistry class. And I had some prompt questions set up because I wanted to make sure I got a discussion and not just get, one-word answers from them. So I found questions that I could ask, or came up with some questions. And then I chose to end the discussion focused on role models, because I wanted them to be able to see how the project can tie to them personally. And role models can come in all shapes and sizes, of course. And so that was a way for me to kind of point that out and point out how there can be role modeling in chemistry and in science. So the next part of and so I did ask them to write up, who was their role model and why, and what were some things that they recognized in the role model that they wanted to mimic. So then the second part of the project would be for them to go through an example of what I was expecting them to do, but a short example. I asked them to focus on a real world subject and learn to tie it to chemistry. So I'll show you what I did for that coming up. The next part is I had them give me their project outline. So in that setup, I asked them specific questions like who's your or what is your real world subject? How are you going to tie it to chemistry? What is the chemistry topic you're trying to tie to this person or to this thing? Very specific, trying to get them to really outline the project so that when they do their page mock-up for the next part of the project, they would be ready to go. So when I asked them to do an example assignment, what I did was I went to the Scientist Spotlights Initiative website and pulled one of their scientists of color, who is Retha Clark King here. And when I went to the website, they actually already had this lesson set up. However, they didn't have as many links and they didn't have all of these questions down here. So in order to help guide my students, I decided I was going to add some questions here. Chem 150 and Chem 152 are the classes that I did this with, and that's the general chemistry course. And then I had them complete this assignment. So I had them go and research Retha Clark King. I gave them some references. I told them they can go to the library and, get more help if they needed to, and then answer these questions down here. I got an idea of what to do from the OFAR handouts. One of the handouts I used from OFAR was one called Creating OER with Students. And then I have my students use the Purdue OWL for learning how to cite their work. And I did create a grading rubric as well. So the students took to that assignment pretty well. I think that they, were getting an idea of how to do the project, at least how to understand how they can tie a real world topic to chemistry. So then I asked them to do their project outline. And so the project outline and the page mock-up was based off of what I found in another OER resource called, it was a guide to making open textbooks with students. The project outline, I have them submit it in Canvas. Well, really all of these assignments, they submitted it in Canvas. And again, I use Purdue OWL for for them to learn how to reference cite their references. The page mockup also, just to give you an idea, is meant to be for them to choose a page in our OER textbook and choose a topic on that page and modify it. Now, they didn't have to go through all the text and change things around. It's just, give me something that you would add or change about the page. Give me some open resources like videos, YouTube videos, or a link to an article that would be interesting or something along those lines. And so that's the page mockup that I was expecting. That was also done in Canvas. I told them they could use Word or Excel to create their pages. Pages in Mac would be the equivalent to Word. But, I left it open for them to be creative. So now I'm showing you some examples of my students' work taken directly from their work. I didn't take out any typos or anything like that. This is exactly what a student sent to me, except I did highlight a couple of things by bolding it. So this student here wanted to talk about deforestation in the DRC, where the deforestation would affect people of color dramatically out there. And then he wanted to tie that to the molecular structures topic that we went over in chemistry. And so what happened here is that they used good references and, highlighted them as best as they could. However, this is not exactly how you would cite your reference. And so I thought, okay, do I need to push that? Maybe I don't need to stress. Maybe I don't need to have my students give me the references or cite their references so much, right? Although in using my OER resource in my textbook, I would love to have that cited. So I have to figure out, how I would do that. And then they chose the chemistry topic, but notice, most of this here is about the real world subject and just a small amount about chemistry here, which is not exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for it to be kind of the other way around. It is a chemistry textbook, really. So I thought, all right, I need to figure out how to make sure my students really talk more about the chemistry and not just, that real world topic. Other students chose to highlight the work of people of color, which I think, stems from the fact that the example that I gave them was about a person of color in science. So they chose to do the same thing, which is totally fine. But I thought, okay, I think I'm going to need some other examples so that they don't all choose to, highlight a person. However, these are some of the things that they came up with. They talked about particular people. I like that they were not only using African-American scientists, but also, Mexican or other nationalities of people. And so I really encouraged them to try and find something that they were interested in. And I actually did have the, students who were African-American chose an African-American scientist. Students who were Latin chose a Latin scientist. So, I'm totally fine with that. I was really happy to see it. And then again, they're not really giving me the chemistry like I thought they would. So I got to work that part out. This one is one of the pages, one of the submissions that I thought looked more like what I expected my students to turn in, which is like when I say a page mock-up, this is what I was expecting for them to have pictures and maybe videos or links to videos or, all these other things. And so, other students did submit things like that, but I thought this was the best example of what my students submitted. And so this student, of course, is talking about Percy Julian. And when it comes to the chemistry, though, I felt like there wasn't a good connection between Percy Julian and the chemistry we're learning in class. So as I've already mentioned, we got to work on that part. But the student actually did give me links to their references and things like that. So I appreciated that. So overall, what I would say went well. First, the students were actually really receptive to having that discussion about anti-racism. I was a little bit nervous about that because I was like, this is a chemistry class and now we're going to bring up anti-racism, right? So I thought, what are they going to expect or what are they going to think? But they were pretty open to talking about their role models and sharing with the rest of the class, their thoughts on anti-racism. Although I think I need to learn more about how to facilitate that discussion. The new procedure that I used definitely went better in terms of getting my students to really understand the project and how to go about completing it. But of course, it still needs some adjusting. And then incorporating more real world aspects into my coursework. It's something I've been really wanting to try and do for a long time. And so using OFAR, the OFAR opportunity to do that was really good. So it got me, started with that. So I have a good jumping off point now. And my challenges were modifying the textbook online. I'm still actually learning how to do that. Another challenge was teaching my students about those non-chemistry topics or those real world topics that were not directly, they had not seen directly tied to chemistry before. Students did not have proper writing techniques or didn't know how to conduct research. So that's a little bit of a challenge moving forward, but I learned that I can work with my library on that. Facilitating discussions for me, and then students didn't really read the textbook, right? So I thought, I was giving them references. I gave them links to the actual textbook and I said, here, this is our textbook. And I used the textbook in class, but I would find that they would give me, I asked for what page are they trying to modify? They gave me links to other textbooks. And so I have to figure out how to help them stay in our textbook. And then the things I'm planning to do differently, what I'm working on right now is highlighted here in bold. I am still learning to modify the textbook online. I am redesigning my class assignments so that the students are required to read using the reading apprenticeship framework. And I'm studying more about, facilitating a discussion around anti-racism. It went well before, but I want to have more of a discussion instead of me having to pull information from the students. Okay, I think I'm over my time now. Thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Schetema. I did that wrong again, right? I'm so sorry.
Okay,
But what an amazing journey with your students, and how ambitious, to take on textbook modification. Any questions for Dr. Nealy? There's lots of wonderful comments in the chat window.
yes, thank you.
Yes, Vern?
Yeah, I have one. I'd like to know, can you share your rubric with us?
Oh,
One of the
yeah.
assignment?
I would have to
You
go
mentioned the
with-
rubric, but we didn't see it.
Yes, I'll put my email address in the chat, and then I would have to go and find it. So I'll put my email address in the chat, and please email me and I can send it to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see. I think Greg, you were next.
Thank you. For the discussion on anti-racism, was that an asynchronous? Is this an asynchronous class?
No, it's synchronous. It was in person.
In person. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Michelle, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, either if Dr. Nealy knows or anyone here about attributions in the OER. So if you actually use that student work to revise an OER, I feel like we would need to attribute it to the students. So does anyone know a good way to do that? I'm more familiar with LibreText, and it would still have the attribution to me as the person who's editing the page.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. And I'm probably going to misstate this. So I think Joy's team would definitely be able to help you with that. But yeah, it involves kind of enveloping in, the license is for you for the entire book, but making sure that there's exceptions for the students, because you're absolutely right. It is their work.
And there's going to be a little discussion of that inside the OFAR course as well.
I'm planning to, with the work that I add to the students, to the textbook, the students' work that I add to the textbook, just below that, I would give them their attribution.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, Graciela, you have the last question, because we do want to get to Anna, who's got a wonderful presentation as well.
Yeah, just quickly, thank you so much. How much time did you spend with the reading apprenticeship skills, like to help the students? Because I find that that's a barrier for the students, and this is a heavy conversation I have with them. So I want to maybe front load that a little bit better.
So I haven't implemented that yet. So I'm learning about reading apprenticeship right now for myself, and then I'll be adding that to the coursework. But right now I'm going through another program where it's all about reading apprenticeship and incorporating active learning techniques and things like that. So we're just now getting into the implementation phase.
Wow. Thank you for that, Dr. Nealy. We don't think of chemistry professors as necessarily taking a deep dive into reading. So wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. That was amazing. All right. Now I want to turn it over to Anna Rodriguez from Moore Park.
Hi, everybody. Okay, I'm going to try to be as chop as I possibly can here. Hang on just a second. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So, thank you. Okay, so my OFAR project was for my child, family, and community. This is a child development class at Moore Park College. And unlike David and Schetema, I have quite a quite a bit of a broader kind of description of what my project was all about, just because it ended up really encompassing the entire class and not just a specific part of it. So to start off, oops, hang on just a second here. So when I started brainstorming for goals and goals for my project, I came up with 3 main ones that I wanted to try. And I've listed them all here, and I've listed action plans that go along with them. So for the first one, to create a respectful space and foster a sense of belonging for all of my students. Just like David with the agreements with the students, I co-created something of the sort with my students. When their syllabus came out, I already put agreements for me and my expectations of them, and my expectations of the whole class. And then in addition to that, they were welcome to add to it, to make edits, and see if there was anything else that we missed. So that part was really brief, but I felt like it went really well. I did get a few suggestions of things to add to the agreement, so that was wonderful. And then the second goal I had was to have my students represented in the resources that they will be receiving. So this was kind of went into a rabbit hole looking for resources for this, just because there's so many things out there. And I did use an open education resource textbook. I am fortunate to be in a discipline that offers quite a number of open educational resources. But my intention was to use that textbook as almost not really a supplement, but really, but not really as the main resource for them. So I wanted to be complementary of the other resources that I was going to provide. And as I was looking for other resources, I found resources from different countries. I found resources from places that have different socioeconomic status and all of those things. So it really provided a variety of perspectives for students. And then in addition to that, I also included different formats. So instead of the usual articles or websites or videos, I added some podcasts, some webinars in there. I added some testimonies and stories from other teachers, from other educators in early childhood, and all of those things. So that, I think, also was a very, very enlightening experience. And then the third one, which I think was what really became the main focus of my project, was to amplify the students' voices and their stories. And when I thought of an action plan for this, it was tough, but I figured I could do this through providing them with some reflection opportunities that they could maybe infuse some of their experiences in. And then at the end of the course, my big goal was to have them create children's literature out of their own stories. So I was very apprehensive about this. I was very nervous about this, but let's move on. Let's see here. Okay. So I tested the waters, and right off the bat, it almost seemed like I received the affirmation that I was looking for, that, okay, this might work, right? So just with the first few assignments, the students really set the tone, and they were talking. They were sharing. So I'm going to just flash snippets of their work, some of their first few assignments here. This was an identity mapping assignment, and what I flashed over there is really just the first part of this assignment. There were prompts that went along with this, and just the honesty and the candor and the openness that that I really felt from the students really encouraged me to, really step out of the box and try more of these, reflective things, right? So of course, throughout the modules, we had discussions, and we had opportunities to digest the material and reflect upon them. So of course, there were the usual reflect on your takeaways and reflect on what resonated with you. But beyond this, I noticed that when I added these next prompts, this was when students really, really started to get into the content. And this is where I really started seeing the comprehension and the understanding of what we were talking about. So, and these additional prompts really were just making the connections between what we were learning and their experiences in life. And, there were times when I needed to put some disclaimers that, yes, some of these prompts may potentially be re-traumatizing, that there may be sensitive topics or concepts that may be talked about. And I also send reminders, and, I send them messages to show one another grace, to show themselves grace, and to keep in mind that, some experiences may not necessarily positive, but they are still impactful. So just having that, that open and honest dialogue with the students was really, really refreshing. So, like I said, so my action plan really was to try to infuse some of those reflective prompts in their discussions. But just based on the first few assignments, it really dawned on me that students really needed this outlet. They really needed this space to express themselves. And I had students who brought to my attention that this really was the only space they can openly talk about some things. And so that to me was something that I needed to harness. And so my action plan evolved. And so the students became co-curators of the course content just by sharing their experiences and making the connections between that and the course materials. And self-reflection became a theme of our course. And so what I thought would be, a self-reflection prompt here and there became a self-reflection prompt for every module and for every topic that we went over. And then, like I said, so their capstone for this course was creating children's literature, and these are some examples of the work that they produced. They did have the option to share it any which way. Some options that I recommended for them was to share it in their classrooms or in their community if they were already teaching, to post it on YouTube as a read aloud video, or openly licensing it through Creative Commons. So I have some of those books right here. And really, these are books, these are treasures of my my short teaching careers so far. But really, I was very proud of how the students really responded to the course and the materials. And then I know we're running over time here, but I wanted to share a few quotes here from the students. And you can take a few minutes to read it. But one that I really, really liked was that one student alluded to being that she appreciated that in this class she was quote unquote part of the textbook, right? And then another student called this this self-reflective process taking an inventory of herself. And it was nice that the students really recognized that this work needed to be done, that they also needed to bring themselves into this space and make it their own. My takeaways, so you can go through this. I won't go over them anymore, but you know, really learned a lot through this experience, and I appreciate Una and the OFAR team for inviting me back here to talk about this project. And this is really important work, and I'm so glad you're all doing this, and let's keep at it. Thank you, Una. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. That was wonderful. Such a nice conclusion. And Liz did put a link in the chat window to Anna was very kind and let us share the links to those children's stories on our website, and so you can go and take a look at those when you get a chance. Well, some questions for Anna and the work that she did with her students on self-reflection and representation.
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Thank you, Anna. That's awesome. I teach history, and I've toyed with the idea of having my students. Well, I do a summative assessment where they kind of have a project that covers the entire class. My question is, how soon in the class did you give them some meat to chew on in terms of what they would be doing for creating a children's literature? Like, is it something that you mentioned just at the beginning, and then of course you gave them the details closer to when it was due, I assume, but was it also something that you were having them think about the whole time? Thank you.
Thank you for asking that, Gregory. It is actually something, it's mentioned in their syllabus. So it is written on there that this will be coming as a final project. But throughout the semester, there will be, in addition to those reflective prompts, there will be a snippet there where, I will let them know that if this is something, this story, what they shared is so compelling to them, they might think about writing their children's book on it. So just kind of, keeping the idea out there that each pieces of their stories can be part of their children's book.
Thank you.
All right. I know we're just about at the hour. Are there any other questions? Anything else anyone needs to share before we go off into our afternoon?
Una, if I can, I'll just say one final word sort of to tie this all together for our participants this year. These are tremendous examples from really shining stars of the OFAR program last year, but every year it's just, tremendous idea after tremendous implementation after tremendous follow-up. We hope that for the OFAR participants this year, learning about these implementations can both inspire you and also relax you a little bit. Most of you came in with really tremendous, ambitious goals. And we do want you to pursue those tremendous, ambitious goals. And, you're not writing the great novel, right? You're implementing something really practical in your class. So thanks to all of our colleagues from last year who shared their really practical, hands-on implementations with us.
I love that metaphor. You might be writing the first chapter of the great American novel. And I want to mention that there's another set of about 8 other action plan sessions like this that are in your course. I know that Joy and Kim added that, and Marites, it's in your course, so you should be able to find those as well. Gayatri, who is a coach this year, was a past participant last year, and she shared her work in the math classroom. So another great one for those of you who might be teaching in that area. And so we have a whole series at this point. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you in the course, and we'll see you again live on December 15th.